Hey there everybody, it's Mike DiLisio. Today I'm going to be taking a look at Moving Wild, which is the newest release from publisher Oink games. Moving Wild is a card game where you're going to be creating a personal tableau in front of you, trying to draft animals and areas that are going to score you the most points. Let's head on over to the table, I'll show you how it works, then we'll come back here and I'll give you my final thoughts. In Moving Wild, you're trying to gain the most points across 3 rounds by drafting cards and then placing them into your personal tableau known as your park. Everybody is going to start with one of these base camp cards, which is an area card, which is one of the 3 different types of cards. So let's just look at a couple of features here. In the upper left, you can see 6 dots and the number 6, and that is saying what the size of this particular area is. Below that is a multiplier, in this case times 1, which is going to apply to the animals that are in this particular area. Below the camp tent here, you've got 3 different types of habitat. And those are the 3 types of habitat in the game. So each animal is going to have a particular habitat that it is going to go into. In this particular area, it'll accept animals of any of the 3 types. And below that, you've got only in this particular area card a reminder for players, which is telling them how many cards you're going to draft across the 3 rounds. So an example of a 4-player game, you draft 8 cards first round, then 7, then 6. All right, let's look at some of the other cards in the game. We talked about the base camp card here being an area card, but let me show you a couple others so you can just get an idea of the differences between them. Here we've got a valley, which is a only 2 space area, so you can't get a lot of animals in there, but it has a times 2 multiplier and it has 2 different types of habitats. Here you've got another area card known as the lake. This one is also a 6 size, much like your base camp there. It has a 1-time multiplier, but it only has the water habitat. In addition to area cards, we've got improvement cards. So for example, this cultivate grassland, what it's saying is you can attach this to attach this as a land habitat to an area. So for example, if I had placed this lake in my park, only a water habitat, but if I attach this to it, now it is a water and land habitat. Then we've got animals, which is going to be what you're going to be putting inside of your areas. So let's look at a couple here. Here is an anteater. It says that it's a friendly animal, meaning that it will go with other animals of the friendly type. It tells you that it takes up 2 space in an area, and its happy camper value, which is that 2. So, for example, if I wanted to, I can place the anteater in the lake area or the base camp area because it fulfills that particular habitat. Also would fulfill it here, and it's taking up 2 out of the 6 space in either of these. You also have animals like this penguin, which is going to have a variable type of scoring. It is a friendly animal. It takes up 1 space, but what it tells you is that it will normally score 1 point. However, it'll score 2 points if there are 3 or more penguins in the same area. So this one is going to be, the happy camper number is going to be dependent upon other animals in that area. All right, and this one would only go into water. It can go into either of these. All right, so let's take a look at how scoring works. Let's assume that this is the end of the first round in a 4-player game. So 8 cards were drafted. You'll see 9, but this one starts with everybody. So in this case, this player drafted 2 area cards, 2 improvement cards, and 4 animal cards. What you'll do at the end of the round is you're going to go area by area and score. All right, so in this case, the elephant took up all the space in that base camp. They score, their happy camper value is 5. The multiplier is 1, so this would simply score 5 points. Over here, you've got a bear that takes up 3 space in an oasis of 1. Normally, you couldn't place it there. However, this particular area had an improvement that increased the space by 2. So now this land had a space of 3, which is enough for the bear. And the bear scoring says it scores 4 points if staying alone. It would score 3 otherwise. Well, this bear is alone, so it would score 4 times 2, which is 8. All right, so you grab those points. In this last area we have here, we have got we've got 1 penguin, and this penguin would score 2 points if there were 3 or more in the same area. Well, there are not. There's only the 1, so it'll score 1 point times 1, which is 1. And then the anteater is just simply taking up 2 of the spots. It gets 2 times 1, which is 2. All right? Then what you have to do is you have to account for any negative points that are going to happen. And the way you can get negative points are if any area is not filled completely to its capacity, it's going to get -2 points for each area. And then if there are any animals that you were not able to place in your park, whether there not being enough room or not the correct habitat, you would leave those off to the side and you would get -2 for each of those animals. In later rounds, if there were places that you could place those animals, you can do so. All right, so in this case, here we've got an elephant that takes up all 6 of the base camp, we're good there. A bear that takes up all 3 of the oasis, we're good there. Here, we've got an anteater of 2, a penguin of 1, so that's only 3 of the 6 spots in the lake, so we would get a -2 for that area. If we just kind of canceled these 2 out together, we would be left with 10, 12, 14 for the first round. You would do this again, another 2 rounds, keeping what you already have. This does not clear out, it just continues to extend. The winner is the player with the most points at the end of all 3 rounds. All right, so there you have Moving Wild. If you've played any other games from this publisher, Oink, a Japanese publisher, certain things are going to feel very familiar to you. Number one, it's in a tiny little box, and so that means that the components are going to be relatively small as well. Oink has done other games with this card size. It fits well inside of that box. This is a particularly big deck of those cards, and then some chips. So as far as the components go, there's not a whole lot to it. You've got those irregularly sized cards and cardboard chips that are of fine quality. The one thing I will point out, and this also has been an issue with some of the other Oink games just because of the realities of the box space they have, is that the font is quite small. And so when it comes to things like the name of the animal, that's not necessarily as important. You can usually kind of have a pretty good idea of what it is, even if you can't read it. But the special abilities on the cards, you have to really kind of make sure you can read that because it's difficult. Now, what's nice is that you don't really have to read what is on the cards of the other players around the table. You know, this can play up to 6. If you had to really be aware of what the text was on the other players' cards, that would certainly be a bigger problem. But just know that the wording and the iconography is small because the cards are pretty small. Other than that, though, the cards are of good quality. This is going to, of course, be a personal preference thing, but I love the art. I love the style of the art on these cards. I love the depiction of the animals and the areas. It feels like Oink games. If you've played them before, it's an art style that is familiar, and I do think that is particularly charming in this game. All right, now to the gameplay itself, the first thing that I feel like it's important to state is that there's really not much innovative here, and so it doesn't get a lot of points for innovation. I mean, really, you're doing a style of drafting that's going to be familiar. You're doing tableau building that's going to feel familiar. The scoring is relatively straightforward. I guess the biggest kind of hook to this is that you have a lot more negative scoring than you might typically have in a tableau building game, and so you have to kind of be aware of the impact of that. but it's not terribly innovative. What it is, though, is very smooth. I mean, perhaps because it is familiar, this is such an easy game to teach. You have 3 different types of cards, and really beyond that, all you need to know is a little bit of how the scoring works, and the scoring is incredibly simple too. The only time that you can have potentially some misunderstanding is with the types of cards that trigger off of other types of cards. Maybe getting familiar with the iconography, this is a friendly animal, this is a hungry animal. This one can be either a friendly animal or a hungry animal, depending upon the habitat it's in. But it doesn't get any more complicated than that. And so I feel like this game is very easy to teach and learn. It's one that you could play in a large group setting. Like I said, this goes up to 6, and it actually has a solo variant too, so it's 1 to 6 players. And I haven't played across all the player counts yet, but I do feel like it's going to scale relatively well. In a game like this, you have to be comfortable with some card draw issues, right? There's certainly a large amount of randomness in the game, and that may be something that turns you off to it. I don't have a problem in a game this quick and snappy. You're playing 3 rounds. There's not going to be, I think, much downtime at all. Everyone is simultaneously choosing their card, flipping it, putting it into their own park. So I don't think there's a lot of downtime. It's a quick game. And if you just don't get the types of cards that you want, sure, it's a bummer, but you can play another game very quickly afterwards and probably have a different experience as far as the card draw. But it is something you have to keep in mind, because depending upon player count especially, there may be a large stack of cards that aren't even in that game. And so while you've got certain animals that score based upon having other of that same animal, you may not see more of those animals. Either they're not in the game or they're just not being passed to you, because that is one thing you can see. You can say, oh, they're going for penguins, I'm going to make sure I don't pass them a penguin. Things along those lines. But oftentimes you're more worried about what you want than what everyone else is trying to do at the table. And really, in a drafting game, you're only worrying about the neighbor to your left or right, depending upon what round it is. So it's a simple game. It's a smooth game. It's one that can feel very satisfying when you get things set up just right, and can be frustrating if you don't get the cards that you're looking for. So know going in that there's a pretty high randomness factor, but if you're okay with that in a short game like I am with this one, then I think there's a lot to like about Moving Wild. I'm going to be giving it a 7.5. I definitely recommend this game with those caveats that I mentioned before. Number one, there's some usability issues with the small font and iconography on the cards, and there's a hefty dose of randomness, and so your mileage may vary upon how comfortable you are with those particular issues. But for me, easy to recommend, 7.5. I would put this in the mid-range of Oink games. You've got so many games. It's towards the top of the middle tier for me personally. All right. That's going to do it for me. This is Mike DiLisio signing off from the Dice Tower Midwest Annex.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching another video from the Dice Tower. Hey, you want to learn more about us, communicate with us? We have a Facebook group, we have a Discord channel, lots of different ways to get involved with the Dice Tower. And you can find that in our Linktree link below. So just click that, it will take you and you can communicate with us on Facebook, join our Facebook groups. There's lots of cool things that you can find and become part of the Dice Tower. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Tom Vassell.